Okay, I want to start off by giving all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakah Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who teach the Bible in 100% truth. And Shalom to the hopeful elect of the 12 tribes of Israel, starting with the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and then following on with the speckled bird, the Israelite foreigners who look like the other nations, living amongst the other nations, but receive this truth and understand it through the Spirit. Shalom to you. So today, gonna go into the subject of what the world calls UFOs, unidentified flying objects. And if you're new to this truth, and one thing you have to understand is that there are, in the Bible, we have a description of what the world calls UFOs, and they're known as the chariots of Yahweh Bashim, Yahweh Shai, or chariots of Israel. They're known as angelic vehicles for angelic beings. Okay, vehicles from the fourth dimension, and when spiritual beings are moving around, they travel around in chariots of the Most High, chariots of Israel. But like I say, if you're new, what you have to understand is that the world clarifies these as unidentified, either UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, or UFO, unidentified flying object. But when you come to the truth, the reason why we call this the truth, because we can connect all the dots. If you go to other religions of the world or other philosophies, they will make a great attempt at explaining certain aspects of life on this world, but ultimately they will not be able to connect as many dots as the Hebrew Israelites. That is because the Hebrew Israelites are the real children of God. There are 18 nations of people biblically on this planet, according to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, and one of those nations is the nation of Israel, his chosen children. And in the kingdom of heaven, this will be a nation of priests, and lawgivers administering law. But at the minute, we're waiting for the destruction of this current empire. And something that you're going to see, if you're new to this, what you have to understand, something that you're going to witness on the day of the Lord, the day that they call Judgment Day. You're going to witness so-called UFOs, and these are vehicles of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai, the son of Yahweh, will be coming back on one of these particular vehicles himself, and there will be other angelic beings alongside him, thousands upon thousands of angelic beings, which will also be traveling in smaller chariots. Okay, so when you go to the book of Revelation 1 and 7, it clearly explains. We can look at this here. It says, "Behold, he cometh," the he being Yahweh Shai, "he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, even all kindreds of the earth, shall wail because of him. Even so, amen." So, what you're looking at here is the description given by John of the return of Yahweh Shai, the day of the Lord. And it quite clearly states that he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him. So the word cloud is code word for UFO, if you like, so-called UFO or UAP. This is a vehicle described as a cloud because it moves as clouds do up in the air, moving in whichever direction it seems to go at will. Obviously, clouds, normal clouds are driven by wind, so they generally move in the direction of wind. Whereas these particular vehicles, these angelic vehicles, they obviously have their own. They're directed by the pilot, if you like, and obviously they travel at much faster speeds, so on and so forth. Now, when you look into the book of Acts and you read of the ascension of Yahweh Shai, Yahweh Shai was put on the cross, and then he he pretty much rose from the dead, and he went to visit his disciples and to let them know, that the next time you see me, the next time I return will be on the day of the Lord. and to prepare yourselves. He pretty much came back with that message to prepare themselves. And when we read about that particular event here in the book of Acts, chapter 1 and 9, it says, and when he had spoken these things, Yahushua, given the advice to his apostles and disciples, it says, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. So here goes that cloud again. The same cloud that Yahushua is described as coming back on is the same cloud that received him up in the sky. Like I say, after he was hung on the cross, died, resurrected, and then, went to visit the disciples. He spoke to them. And then, like it says here, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And it says, and while they looked steadfastly towards heaven as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel. Now, these two men were angels who had, I use the word shape-shifted into the form of man, if you like, to make themselves look like they were men. And it says, which also said, ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Yahushua, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as you have seen him go into heaven. So it's pretty much these angels are, telling these disciples that, you've just seen Yahushua, ascend up into heaven, into this cloud and disappear. And, you're gazing at it, but, you should pretty much get used to it, because that's the same way he's coming back. It's the same way that he's going to return, as it says in Revelation 1 and 7. He shall return in a cloud, and every eye shall see him. So, like I say, this cloud is code word for angelic vehicle of angelic beings. And, when you go to these particular famous movies like Independence Day, they show you images of a great, alien invasion. Again, in the world, they try to throw you off the trail of these particular things, and they try not to give you so much information to the general public, and they try to keep it a mystery. But, you're here, you're at this truth, you're new to this truth, and you're going to learn a lot of things. We're going to connect a lot of dots, and one of those dots is the fact of what are UFOs. And, like I say, when you look around, when you learn this truth, and then you look around into media and into movies and so on and so forth, you'll realize that this message has been given to you through the, especially movies, yet at the same time they deny information and they classify things as unidentified. If you go to 1 Thessalonians 4 and 16, it says, for the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. So, we're building up to the time of the implementation of the MOTB, and that's a major prophecy that's due to take place. And we're also waiting for the start of World War III. And, once those two things take place, we know the next prophecy due to take place, major prophecy, is the return of Yahushua, returning on that cloud, returning where every eye on earth shall see him at once. It's one big, huge ship which will cover the earth. So the moment at which Yahushua returns will be a particular moment during World War III. And, during the process of World War III, scriptures say we will see the destruction of America, which is known as Babylon the Great in the scriptures, as well as other names. And the scriptures tell us that it will take 1 hour for America to be destroyed. And that will be a point during World War III at which other nations decide to shoot ICBM nuclear missiles at America. So World War III will be taking place. And at one particular point, all the other nations of the world will turn to America and shoot their ICBMs, whatever they have, towards it. And America will be destroyed within 1 hour. Now, at the very beginning moment of that hour, just as that first nuclear ICBM missile lands on the land of America, that is the moment at which this chariot of Yahushua, this cloud, this so-called UFO, will appear. and it will cover the whole face of the earth, and every eye shall see. And then at that particular moment, it says here, it says, and then the dead in Christ shall rise first, the dead in Hamashiach. So those that are the believers in Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, those who are members of the elect, those who called on that name, but happen to pass away before the return of the Lord, those that are now in the spirit world, their spirits will be put back into their bodies will raise up out of the ground, and they will be the first to ascend up into heaven, up into this chariot of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. And then it says, and then we, which are alive and remain, shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. So again, that's referring to those down here, the members of the elect, who believe in this truth, who make it all the way to the day of the Lord, and still believe in this truth, who call on the names Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, and pretty much subscribe to this truth and subscribe to this lifestyle. Those that believe they're Hebrew Israelites. It's not just a matter of just believing you're a Hebrew Israelite or believing in part of this truth or particular points of view. You have to be a member of the elect. You have to be, first of all, a member of the nation of Israel, out of the 18 biblical nations on this planet. And then within the nation of Israel, you have to be a member of the elect. And to know if you're a member of the elect, this spirit will work on you for you to understand this truth, and it will help connect the dots within your mind. And eventually you will be calling on the names Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, for refuge. So if you've made it that far, then you're in with a good chance. And then from then on, if the spirit was taking hold of you and certain particular things did change around you, like for example, you calling on the name of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, forgetting about these false gods and idols and images of this earth and the lifestyle, start to put it behind you, start to look to the future, then there's a good chance you're a member of the elect. So, and then it says here, then we which are alive, so Lord willing, we're all part of that number. It says, then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, in that so-called UFO, to meet the Lord in the air. Now, when you move on to Zechariah chapter 5, at that moment, World War III is taking place, and then these ICBMs start to head towards America. We now know America is going to be destroyed within an hour. And at that moment, this chariot is going to appear. And it's going to beam up the dead, the members of the elect that are dead first. And then it's going to beam up the members of the elect that are alive. And the reason why it's going to do this is to save them, deliver them from the destruction of America. And then, within that hour, like I mentioned, ICBMs from all around the earth will start to pound the land of Babylon the Great, America, resulting in its total annihilation. And, along with the arrival of the Chariot of Yahweh Shai, this one big, huge so-called UFO covering the face of the earth, alongside that will be thousands upon thousands upon thousands of angelic beings, angels, also traveling in their own smaller angelic vehicles from a different dimension. And these angelic beings will start to shoot laser fire upon America, upon Babylon the Great, to help destroy it, along with the ICBMs. And this will also take place in various parts around the world, around the earth, where there are Edomite strongholds. And when you look at, as I mentioned, the book of Zechariah, chapter 5 and 1, it talks about the flying scroll. It says, then I turned and lifted up mine eyes and look, and behold, a flying roll. And he said unto me, this is the angel speaking to Zechariah. It says, what seest thou? And I answered, I see a flying roll. The length thereof is 20 cubits, and the breadth thereof 10 cubits. Then he said unto me, this is the curse. So the angel then said, the angel said to Zechariah, what do you see? And he said, I saw this flying roll, and it's such and such size. You can go into, you can look up that particular size yourself and work out what it is if you, if you're interested in that. It says, then he said unto me, then the angel said to Zechariah, this is the curse that goeth forth over the face of the whole earth. For every one that stealeth shall be cut off, as on this side according to it, and every one that sweareth shall be cut off, as on that side according to it. Okay, so Zechariah saw these flying rolls, and the angel said, what do you see? And he said, I see flying rolls. And he said, do you know what they are? And the angel went on to explain, this is the curse that goeth forth over the face of the whole earth. And the reason for that is, obviously, come the destruction of America, like I say, these flying rolls, these angelic vehicles, these chariots of the Most High, these so-called UFOs will shoot laser fire, on the land, on certain buildings and particular people, and they'll pretty much vaporize people and vaporize things and turn them into dust. What I will say as well, it says here a flying roll. I think it's probably about a month ago, I did come out of work one night, and I didn't have time to take any photos or videos, but I did come out of work. I came out of the building, and I remember looking up into the sky, and I kind of glanced up into the sky as you normally do, and I saw two flying rolls. And at first, I looked up and I didn't really pay much attention, and I looked back down and I carried on walking, and then it kind of hit me. I said, hang on a minute, that's not a plane, because there were two of them together in formation. So one was slightly ahead of the other, and the one that was behind was set out to the side a little bit. So they were in formation, and initially I thought they were passenger flights. And then obviously when I looked up and looked back down, and my second thought was, no, there's two together. So I looked back up, and then I realized that they were traveling very, very fast, like extremely fast. And they covered the scenery of the sky within seconds. And then when I looked over to the right to look at actual passenger planes themselves, these things look, I saw about three or four at the same time in a different direction. And they were pretty much moving in slow motion compared to these rolls. Now, these rolls that I saw were so high, they were pretty much, up to where the very height of the clouds were. They were like a really far, far, far distance up into the sky. But they were moving rapidly, extremely fast. They were moving in formation, and there were two rolls, and they were illuminated. So what they actually looked like was two fluorescent tubes. Now, I know someone who lives down my street, and a couple of days later, he looks out for particular things in the sky as well. He uses his telescope and stuff. And a couple of days later, he'd said to me, he said, look, I saw something in the sky, and he tried to describe it, and he wasn't really getting the words out. And I told him, I said, look, this is what I saw. And he said, yeah, this is exactly what I saw. So he saw the, fluorescent tube-like chariots traveling in the sky. And what he said to me, which he made a really good point, he said, look, because we described what we saw to each other, and we both realized that we'd seen them, extremely high, and not just sort of, 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet, but literally up towards the ozone layer. Like they were so high, it's like literally as far as the eye could see. And what he explained to me, he goes, look, if you're seeing it that far away, and you're still clearly seeing these two fluorescent tubes, he said, imagine how big they are if you were to bring them down here. If they were to travel X amount of thousand feet all the way down towards us, he goes, they'd cover the whole area. So he made a really good point. And then I think a couple of days after that, I bumped into him again, and he was kind of like all excited. And he said to me that he saw the same two on a video somewhere on the other side of the world. So, this is about a month ago. So, currently we're in a time when there are flying rolls, rolling around the skies, rolling back and forth around the earth. And they're pretty much scouting the earth and working out, where their plan of attack is going to be, so on and so forth. a little bit like a reconnaissance mission. It says here, and Zechariah describes it perfectly. Well, the angel, sorry, should I say, described it to Zechariah perfectly. He says, "This is the curse that goeth forth over the face of the whole earth." And you're going to witness that curse, like I say, when the day that Yahushua arrives, and he arrives with other angelic beings in angelic vehicles, and they start to shoot laser fire on Babylon the Great, America. Continuing here with Zechariah 5 and 4, it says, "I will bring it forth, saith the Lord of hosts, Yahweh, and it shall enter into the house of the thief." The thief is Esau, these Edomites. And all the lands in which they're ruling at the minute are lands that they've pretty much entered as thieves and stolen a lot of their wealth. So this is what it's talking about. It says, "I will bring it forth, saith the Lord of hosts, and it shall enter into the house of the thief." And that's what they're doing at the minute, by coming into our atmosphere, into the Earth's atmosphere. These chariots are on a reconnaissance mission. They're starting to scout, what's around, what's here, what's there. And they know that they're going to be involved in a fight very soon. So that's what they're doing. They're preparing themselves. At the time when these chariots appear and start to shoot laser fire, and like I said, this will also appear around the earth in other places and during World War III, and the nations will use their fighter jets to try fight against these particular angelic beings. But it's not going to work. It's going to be to no avail. And that's all coming back to entering into the house of the thief. At the minute, the number of UFO, so-called UFO sightings, are increasing, and these are these UFOs, these chariots coming into the atmosphere on a scouting mission. And when it comes to that day of attack, in which they are led, the charge is led by Yahushua, the day of judgment, again they will be entering into the house of the thief by force. And it says, as it says again, "I will bring it forth, saith the Lord of hosts, and it shall enter into the house of the thief, and into the house of him that sweareth falsely by my name, and it shall remain in the midst of his house, and shall consume it, and the timber thereof, and the stones thereof." So again, this is talking about these Edomites. And when it says here, "and into the house of him that sweareth falsely by my name," what happens in this westernized democratic system? When you go to court, you swear on the Bible, you swear on the name of God. Yet, society then promotes to you to break all these laws of God. So ultimately, these people are swearing falsely by his name. Even these alphabet people, they try to use the Bible to justify their nonsense. So what are they doing? They're swearing falsely by the name of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai. And all Edomites do that. The fact that they changed the image of the Most High and his name to hide you from it, is them swearing falsely by that name. So, this chapter carries on, and you can get into it yourself, but I just wanted to break down the point of the flying roll and thereabout. Revelation 15:2 says, "And I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire." Okay, so when these members of the elect are delivered up into this chariot with Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, with Yahushai arrives, he beams up the members of the elect, and then we have an hour in which America is then being destroyed, turned into a lake of fire. And this describes that point. It says, "And I saw as it were a sea of mingled glass with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast," those that had been delivered, "and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. And they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are thy works, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are thy ways, thou King of saints." So this is describing the moment that the members of the elect get beamed up into this so-called UFO to be taken out of the way, to be delivered away from the destruction. And these members of the elect will mainly be in America, a great concentration of them in the lands of America. But then there will also be members of the elect scattered around the earth who look like the other nations, whose spirit and bloodline go back to the same seed. So at that point, the members of the elect are going to be in a so-called UFO in a chariot, looking down onto earth, and they're going to see the lake of fire, which is Babylon the Great, America. And that's what it's talking about, and it says, I see a sea of mingled glass and fire. And I saw, it says John here, 15:2, and I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire. And when you take that into account, you're pretty much looking at an image like this. So, okay, so that was kind of like for the new guys. I mean, if you want to go into it deeper, you can look into the book of Ezekiel, chapter 1, and he goes into describing angelic beings, the vision he had regarding angelic beings, and also a chariot of the Most High. And he says here, now it came to pass in the 30th year, in the 4th month, and in the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river Chebar, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. In the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity, the word of the Lord came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans, by the river Chebar. And the hand of the Lord was there upon him. And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, that cloud again, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. And out of the midst thereof, as the colour of amber, and out of the midst of the fire. And also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of man. So Ezekiel goes on to describe these angelic beings that stepped out of this particular vehicle. And if you want to go into that deeper, you can yourself. But what I'm trying to bring you back to the point of is the vehicle that these angelic beings used in this particular vision. Ezekiel says here, I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud. So this is again describing what the world classifies as unidentified flying objects, great clouds traveling like whirlwinds, and this particular one came out of the north. And it says here, a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. So this ain't no ordinary cloud on a rainy day. You can say there's something about it, and a brightness was about it, and a fire enfolding itself. Again, if you want to go a little bit deeper, you want a little bit more understanding, if you're new to this, you can look up an incident involving Saul, which later became Apostle Paul. And it says the conversation of Saul, Acts 9:1. It says here, and Saul, yet breathing out of threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went unto the high priest. And it says here, and desired of him letters to Damascus, to the synagogues, that if he found any of this way, whether they are men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. And as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined around him a light from heaven. Okay, so before Apostle Paul became Apostle Paul, he was King Saul. And it says here, King Saul, yet breathing out of threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord. So he's pretty much spitting blood, according to, threatening and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went unto the high priest. And then it says he desired letters to be written to Damascus, to the synagogues, that if he found any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. So what he's trying to do, he's trying to go against the word. And he's telling the priest, you better send letters out to your synagogues in Damascus and tell them that if I find any of these members of the synagogues following the ways of the disciples, I'm going to bring them bound into Jerusalem. Right? And then it says here, and as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven. And he fell to the earth, and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Okay, so this white light came out of the sky while he's on his horse. And as it says, this suddenly shined round about him, this light from heaven, and he fell off this horse. And then he heard a voice saying unto him, why persecutest thou me? And he said, who art thou, Lord? Question mark. And the Lord said, I am Yahushai, whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. And he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? And the Lord said unto him, arise, and go into the city, and it shall be told thee what thou must do. Okay, so, Saul's just went up to the high priest, and he's kicking off about, the work that these disciples are doing. And then all of a sudden, as he's left, and he's on his horse, and he's traveling, this great white light has come out of the sky. And then he's fallen off the horse, and then his voice speaks to him, and then he speaks back, and he realizes this is the Lord. And then with that, he's in subjection. And that's why he then says, what is it that you now want me to do? And the Lord said, go to the city, and there it shall be told what you must do. And then it goes on to say, and the men which journeyed with him, with Saul, stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no man. Okay, so the ones that were with Saul were looking around, and they're like, yeah, we can hear the voice that you're talking to, but we can't see nobody. But obviously there was this emanating bright, shining white light coming down. And it said, and Saul arose from the earth, and when his eyes were opened, he saw no man, but they led him by the hand and brought him to Damascus. And he was there 3 days without sight, and neither did eat or drink. So, after that point, he couldn't see for 3 days. And, he completely lost his appetite. No eating, no drinking. And again, this is the Yahushai, coming to him and, pretty much rocking his whole little world and changing it. Like I say, eventually he went on to become Apostle Paul and, do great work for Yahushai. But at that point, again, what is it that came down? What is it, this thing that came out of the sky with this super bright white light? This is what the world calls a so-called UFO, a chariot of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai. A little bit like what you see in this picture here. Now, this picture was taken by a man that I know. This particular guy, I've known him for a long time, and I think it was about 2 years ago he came around to this truth. I think we had a conversation at one point, and he said a few things to me, and then I thought, okay, yeah, this is the Spirit opening up the conversation. So I kind of introduced him to the truth, and ever since then, the truth hit him in quite a big way, and he's been growing ever since. And it's been about 2 years, and he believes on the name Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai. He subscribes to this truth sincerely, and what the Lord is doing is building up his faith by showing him chariots of the Most High. And this particular one happened to appear, from his back garden. Now, he's described various ones before, but on this particular occasion, he's managed to actually take a picture of it. And as you can see, for example, looking down the bottom here, we can tell that this is at nighttime. There's absolutely no light down the bottom here, so this is not in the daytime. And this is not the sun. The sun emanates with a particular yellowish color. And this color, when you zoom into the middle, you see this super bright white light. Could you imagine diving into that white light? Where would you appear? Now, he did take a little video clip of this as well. He said to me at the time that the moon, he said to me at the time that the moon was directly behind him. It would have been good had he turned the camera around to see the moon. But again, you can quite clearly see what's going on here. This is it almost looks like a chariot-shaped object in there. You can kind of see the oval shape, and you can just see the super bright white light emanating from it. It's lighting up. From this particular part here, you can see the clouds that are below it seem to be lit up by it, and at the same time, when you look in this particular corner here, the light seems to be shining upwards. So it's definitely not coming from the sky. I mean, there's thick, good old British thick clouds above the top there. So this is definitely, not something shining from the sky. And this is what they call a UFO. This is a chariot of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Chariot of Israel, and a cloud. That's something similar to what you'll see Yahweh Shai return on. Now, again, going back to that story of Saul, what did it say? It said 9:3, Acts 9:3, and it said, and as Saul journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven. So that light coming from heaven ain't going to be no, ordinary light, like you get down here on earth. This is going to be a super, super, super bright white light. And when you look right into the middle of that, you concentrate on the middle of that. I mean, this is as white can be. Look at the screen now. If I get that right into the middle there, this is pure white. This is white as white. This is the white of heaven, the white of the angelic beings in their angelic vehicles. Now, the scriptures do say that, if you believe on the Lord, you believe on Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai, then angels encampeth round about you, to keep charge over you and to stop you getting into trouble. And so I believe that, this could be, what's happening here in this particular situation. Like I said, the person who took the photo does believe in the name Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai, and he takes his truth sincerely. He takes his truth seriously. He doesn't just treat it as entertainment. And here you go, Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai sent him a major, major faith booster. So all praises to Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. But I mean, looking at that, I mean, you can easily, say that's out of a movie or something. If you looked at that. And that's what they try and show you in these movies. The powers that be, they understand the truth. They understand that they've been given a certain amount of time on this earth. And they understand that the time is almost up. One of the things that is warning them that the time is up is the fact that the prophets of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai are out here telling you the future, telling you things that are to come. There's not many other people out here. There's nobody else out here, in fact, that can do that. So that's one major warning sign to these ruling elites. But another warning sign is the appearance of these chariots of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. They're on the increase and they're intensifying and they're getting closer. I did explain probably a year ago that slowly these so-called UFO sightings will become more obvious, become clearer and clearer as we get closer to the day of the Lord. And that's exactly what you're seeing here. So, it's hard to tell the actual particular shape of the objects. I mean, it kind of looks like it's an oval shape, but then there could be a flying roll in the middle there. It's such a bright white light. It's kind of really hard to tell, but there's definitely something there. And you imagine seeing this in the middle of the night. This will change your whole perception on reality, and that's what Yahweh Shai is coming to do. So moving on, this is Habakkuk, the book of Habakkuk, chapter 3. It says Yahweh's deliverance of his people, and this is a prayer of Habakkuk, the prophet, upon Shinar. It says, O Lord, I have heard thy speech, and was afraid. O Lord, revive thy work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make known. In wrath, remember mercy. So Habakkuk's throwing up a prayer. He had a vision of these end times, and he's throwing up a prayer to the Lord, saying, revive thy work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make known. Remind us who you are and bring your word back to us, because Habakkuk understands that as a nation of people, we're going to lose our way. And he understands that he has to then wait in the last days for the Holy Spirit to come back upon him, for him to wake back up from this truth in order to survive this destruction that's coming. And that's what, Habakkuk is asking for in his prayer. He says, I have heard thy speech and was afraid. O Lord, revive thy work in the midst of the years, make known. In wrath, remember mercy. Remember me, please, when it goes down. Habakkuk 3:3. God came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran, Selah. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of praise. Okay, so his glory covered the heavens is referring back to this chariot. That's when every eye shall see, and the earth was full of praise, it says. And his brightness was as the light. He had horns coming out of his hand. Okay, so the brightness was as the light. As what light? The light of heaven. And that's what you're seeing here. That brightness, that super, super white, bright light, that same powerful, bright, white light that knocked Saul off his horse just before he heard the Lord speak to him. And it says, and his brightness was as the light. He had horns coming out of his hand, and there was the hiding of his power. So this is talking about the appearance of Yahushua appearing in that glory in the heavens, covering the heavens. And then it talks about a brightness of light. It then discusses he had horns coming out of his hand. Now, when you go to the word horn, you go back to the word keren. And the word keren, it comes back to this meaning here, which we have various different meanings. This is a horn of strength, flask, horn, flask, container, flask, musical instrument, horn of horn-like projections on the altar, or rays of light. So this word, Quran, horn, goes back to one of these, and we translate it back to ray of light. The reason why, if you look at the root word of Quran, you go back to shine. It says here to send out rays, to display or grow horns, be horned. So, what you're reading here are rays of light. These horns represent rays of light. And it says, and his brightness was as the light. He had rays of light coming out of his hands, and there was the hiding of his power. Okay, so, Yahushua can make, rays of light appear from his hand. But in this particular instance, it's talking about his appearance. It's talking about the chariot. It's talking about his glory covering the clouds. So when it talks about his hands, it's pretty much talking about the chariot. This chariot is going to be shooting horns of light, rays of light, and that's what we classify as laser beam fire. When you move on to Habakkuk 3:5, it says, before him went the pestilence, and burning coals went forth at his feet. So when you look up this word burning coals, you get reshef, and this translates back to flame, firebolt, spark. Okay, and again, when you go back to the root word of reshef, sorry, pronunciations are not that great. You go back to the word burn. Okay, to burn, to be burned, to be burned up. So when it says here burning coals that went forth from his feet, these burning coals represent firebolts, to burn, to be burned. So this goes back to these, so-called UFOs, chariots of Israel, chariot of Yahushua, shooting laser fire. It says, Habakkuk 3:6 says, he stood and measured the earth. He beheld and drove asunder the nations, and the everlasting mountains were scattered, and perpetual hills did bow. His ways are everlasting. So, when it says here, these everlasting mountains were scattered, and the perpetual hills did bow, this is talking about the governments and nations around the world, which are all going to bow to him as he's going to be King of Kings. But going back up slightly, it says he beheld and drove asunder the nations. So when you look up drove asunder the nations, you have Northar. And when you look up the definition of Northar, it says here a primitive root to jump, i.e. be violently agitated, causatively to terrify, shake off, unite, drive asunder, leap, loose, make, move, undo. So Yahushua is coming to violently agitates this place. Going back to the precept here, he says he stood and measured the earth and beheld. And so, he took it all into account, and he made his judgment and drove asunder the nations. He violently agitated the nations, and the everlasting mountains, governments, were scattered, and the perpetual hills, these smaller, nations, did bow. His ways are everlasting. So, this is all describing the return of Yahushai. And like I say, these coming back in a chariot with other angelic beings in their own individual smaller chariots. And these will be shooting laser fire upon the earth. And the elect will be delivered into this one main chariot of Yahushai. This is all coming on the day of the Lord. At the minute, if you're new to this and you've been in the world up until now, they might have spoken to you about UFOs. The thing about this world, this education system in this world, is they don't want to teach you anything. They don't really want you to be, that well informed about the truth. They just want to educate you or train you in their way of life. But like I say, when you come to this truth, we connect many dots. Now, before I go, I was actually researching for pictures of so-called UFOs shooting, laser beams of fire, and I came across this particular article here. This information is not brand new. It's a story that's been out before, but nonetheless, if it's new to you, I will leave the link in the description box for you to have a look. I'm not going to go through the whole article at the minute. I'm just going to point out the main part, the main point of it, and what it's about. And this is from the Portugal News, and it's dated the 23rd of August 2022. It says here, UFO shot down an ICBM. In September 1964, Dr. Robert Jacobs watched a short video that changed his life. So this Dr. Robert Jacobs goes on to describe events that he went through. Just a quick brief summary here of who he is. It says, I was part of a government cover-up for 17 years. I was the officer in charge of photographic instrumentation at Vandenberg Air Force Base from 1963 to 66. Bob Jacobs said in October 2021 press conference. He was in charge of a 100-man unit responsible for photographing and videoing top secret intercontinental ballistic missile tests. So that was his job. And it says here, in what is now Vandenberg Space Force Base near Los Angeles, California. So that's what this gentleman did. He was in charge of videoing these ICBMs, these intercontinental ballistic missiles, and the tests. And for that reason, they would just do research and move forward from there. Now, there was one particular occasion when they were sent down to this place called Big Sur. It says here, a picturesque national park near Monterey in Central California, and set up the massive new device. They were given this new device to set up and fire. And, with that, it was his job and his team's job to make sure they take photos and videos of this particular event in order for the government to analyze. Now, it says it proved much more capable than the previous systems, this ICBM that they were testing. It says here, on the 14th of September 1964, the missile launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base and headed towards its target, a tiny atoll in the Pacific Ocean. The payload of the missile was a dummy nuclear warhead. The launch tested a new chaff system to decoy Russian anti-nuclear missile systems. So that's what they were testing at that particular time. It says here, this is his description of the event, right? It says, then an object flew into the frame from the left, the same direction we had been going. Jacobs continued. So the direction that this ICBM's going in is the direction that this object came into view, into frame. It says, Jacobs continued. It flew above the warhead and fired a beam of light at the warhead. Then it flew in front of the warhead and fired another beam of light. It flew below the warhead and fired another beam. Then it passed behind the warhead and fired a fourth beam of light. and departed the same way it had entered the video. At that point, the warhead tumbled out of the field of view. The film stopped. Okay, so they were pretty much testing an ICBM, and during the testing of this particular thing, while it was up in the air and it was flying through the air, they were filming it, and on the footage, a Chariot of Israel, one of these vehicles of the angelic beings, can be seen coming into the shot, firing 4 laser beams at this particular warhead and disabling it. And with that, it then started to, it lost its trajectory, it lost its momentum, and it tumbled out of the ground and fell away. So, like I say, I'll put the link to this article in the description box, but this pretty much backs up what the scriptures tell you, that there are angelic beings who have the ability to fire horns of light, rays of light, in order to burn. Okay, yeah, so that's one of the tools of these angelic vehicles. And like I say, these are the vehicles of the angels, and Yahweh, who's sending his son, Yahushai, will be sending him in an huge almighty chariot, what they call a so-called UFO. That's going to be the day of the Lord. Looking into it further here, if you go online, I mean, I'll leave the link for this article in the description box, but if you go online, you will find video footage of this particular incident, and this is a photo dramatization of the incident. It just shows that this particular warhead flying through the sky and this Chariot of Israel disabling it. But like I say, if you go online, you will find videos of it. I just didn't want to take it that far for the fear of copyright. So we're getting to that time. We're getting to that close to that time of the return of Yahushai. We got the major prophecy of the MOTB to take place, Jacob's trouble, and then we're waiting for World War III to kick off. Once that happens, we know we're going to have, what the world calls an alien invasion, and they're actually known as an invasion of Yahushai and the angels. And as scriptures say, they're going to enter into the house of the thief, and they're going to fire, rays of light to burn, to destroy buildings, to vaporize people. This is all something that you need to get used to if you want to subscribe to this truth. If you're new to this truth, you have to take this into your mind and prepare. You have to understand. I'm out here giving you, these breakdowns and this understanding of what's going to happen, for example. But even for myself on the day of the Lord, it's going to be a lot to take on board. It's going to be a lot to handle. So, if you're just getting into this truth new, and you subscribe to this truth, and you feel like the Spirit's working on you, and you're supposed to be here with this truth, taking it on board. If you get to the point where you believe on the names of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, you believe that they are the top gods on this earth, then you can set yourself on the road to salvation, possibly, if you're a member of the elect. When you go to these other religions, these other philosophies of life, they all talk to you about various gods, but none of them show the signs in the way that Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai does. They might show various signs, through the Spirit to various people that they've got, wrapped up in confusion. And don't forget, when you're praying on these other names, Jesus and Allah and Buddha and so on and so forth, you are calling on spiritual beings. So there are, demonic left-hand spiritual beings that can make things happen for you in that name. But ultimately, we're getting into the time where, the top spirit, the top power, the Most High, Yahweh, is making himself known. The prelude to that is giving his secrets to the prophets to come out and tell you. And that's what we're doing. So if anybody comes at you and claims to be speaking in the name of God, ask them what secrets they can give you. Can they give you the name of God? If they can, then, the name should be Yahweh. If it's not, then, you're onto a dud. So with that, I hope that was edifying. I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to say all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, Bahashim, Rakat, Kwadash. And until next time, Shalom.